Your host, Katrina Esau, Sabrina Protic, Ricky Burney, and Walter Parker. Now let's get ready to have that conversation. Uncomfortable Conversations is powered by the Trendsetter Mentor Group, an exclusive membership for mentorship on Facebook.
Good morning in balmy Florida. Little nippy out there, guys. Says 39 degrees here in Florida, and I hear temperatures are in the 20s in states like North Carolina. So I still feel like that we got this here in Florida. Yep. As a matter of fact, I'm hot. I was just saying I'm warm. Got my heat on, but it's set really low. It's just on 74, but now I'm hot. So you know how Florida is. You know, we'll have a little sunshine before you know it, walking around with flip-flops. So I had my flip-flops on yesterday, even though it was a little chilly. So anyway, wake up, everybody. We're going to bring you a powerful show. Welcome to Uncomfortable Conversations this morning. My name is Sabrina Protic. Our mission each week is to encourage, equip, and empower our listeners to have uncomfortable conversations on a personal and social level that impacts all of our lives. We have the opportunity to select and have uncomfortable conversations on hot topics with our host, Ricky Burney, author of the book, Destined for Greatness, 90-Day Transformation, Affirmation, and our new host, Walter Parker. And he's a divisional sales manager at Contour Mortgage Corporation. He's not going to be with us this morning, but he sends his uncomfortable conversation hello to all of you guys. So our trending topic today is criminal justice, babies behind bars, emotional or unethical. We have our panel here that are going to share their perspectives on this topic. And Ricky, you want to introduce our panelists today?
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. We have two very distinguished panelists today, Dr. Katrina Esau and Whitney Hartford. Whitney Hartford is the creator of the YouTube channel, Momming Like a Boss and Thrifting Like a Boss. And she is also a correspondent on the Thriving Women Talk. So welcome to the show. Dr. Katrina Esau is the author of the book, The Pain of Infidelity Bursts Perfect. It's a blueprint for the women who have experienced the pain of cheating and infidelity. She is also the CEO and president of KE3 Worldwide Enterprises, LLC. And we look forward to having you. You've had some amazing insight over the past few weeks on this very dialogue that we're speaking about in regards to prison reform. So I am looking forward to this very robust conversation that needs to be had. Sabrina, back to you.
Thank you so much, Ricky. And, you know, this topic, so impactful, so insightful. And we're bringing this to light. We're bringing this subject matter to light. There's so many things that we don't know that's going on. So there are nearly 2 million children under the age of 18 with a parent in prison or jail. Most of these children are under the age of 10 nationwide. 48% of women in state prisons and 3% are those in federal prisons are pregnant at sentencing time. The families they leave behind, it's just amazing. It says professionals and policymakers are in a quandary over this. Like they really don't know what to do. The question we're asking our panel today is, what should happen when the infants are born in prison? What do we do? What has been done and what should we do? 9 state women prisons have built nursery programs for pregnant women. California, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Nebraska, New York State, South Dakota, Washington, and West Virginia. Cheers to those states. It is only in recent years that the nursery programs in California, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, South Dakota, and Washington have even opened. West Virginia is most recently added with this nursery program opening in 2009. New York State opened the country's first prison nursery in 1902. Just that went back that far, 1902, and stood alone until 1994 when Nebraska's nursery first opened. Prison nursery programs allow a mother to parent her infant for a finite period anywhere from 30 days to 30 months, depending on the facility. The general rule, though, is an additional 30, let's say, depending on the rules, and these women are incarcerated and can participate in a nursery program if her conviction is for a nonviolent crime and she has no history of child abuse or neglect. So it's really going to depend on her behavior and why she was incarcerated. Nurseries are on site within the prison's complex, either as a wing or a unit of the prison, separated from the general population, and others are off-site in community correction settings. The verdict is still out regarding which model works best. There is currently no standard policy for what happens when a woman gives birth while incarcerated. While the 9 state prisons mentioned earlier do have nurseries, many just do not. This makes more sense when looking at longer context of women that have health issues in prison. In fact, it was not until 1990s that mandatory health care for incarcerated women came into effect. This is just so hard to believe. We're in the 20th century. And only recently have states began to ban the shackling of pregnant women during active labor and childbirth. That just is unconscionable, that these women were shackled while they were pregnant and even going through the childbirthing process. Dr. Katrina, and Whitney, what are your thoughts on this topic?
It's just mind-blowing, just even listening to you read the stats, because there's so many things that come to mind for me. My first thought is, number one, why don't we have a standard process? Why isn't there something standard across the board? It should be more than, a few states that even offer this program. Then my mind goes over to like the training of the caregivers. Like, are they having these babies? And I know we'll probably get to this later down the line, but, are they having these babies with, folk that have no training? Are they having it where there's hospital staff involved? So it's just a lot of that stuff comes to mind for me. And it's unconscious. It's just like, it's crazy to me. It's crazy to me how you can have a parent and then to have her shackled down to have the baby. Like, if they just recently, prohibited that, like, you're already in pain, you're already uncomfortable. And then I can't even imagine being shackled, whether by my hand or my feet, trying to have a baby. That's crazy to me.
Absolutely. I agree with Dr. Katrina. Just as a mother myself who gave birth to twins, I can only imagine the pain that the mother is already in and having to be tied down. You're already going through emotional roller coaster of how long are you going to be able to be around your baby, depending on your sentence. Are you going to be able to nurse him? I think it's really great that these facilities have nursing programs, but they need to be a little bit more in depth, I think, from the birthing process to the appointments. I know a lot of prisons, they have medical programs for people in general with all medical issues, but what about those that are carrying another life? That we need to look out for that life, because they're going to be the next generation. So I think that, yes, while it's great to have the nurseries in place, the fact that they don't have a program for the women that are going to give birth or in the process of, just giving birth and having to feed their child, that's going to determine what the outcome of that child's going to be like over the years to come. And I think it's very, very important to figure out that sooner rather than later, so we can keep more people out of prisons and raise proper human beings.
Thank you so much, Whitney and Dr. Katrina Eastoff, for those comments. This is certainly very heartbreaking. And, to know that these mothers aren't even getting the regular doctor visits. We're mothers, the three of us are moms, and we had our regular doctor visits right up until we had the baby. So we were getting that well baby care before the baby was born, but they call it prenatal care. And these moms aren't even getting the prenatal care, let alone delivering a child, probably in very harsh, cold environments. If you're shackled, it's probably not the best care. And we all remember that one moment where the baby's put on your chest, just when it's newborn. They may not even get that.
That's baby a moment you want to cherish. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That baby.
You don't get a do-over in that.
Oh.
Yeah, you don't get that do-over. And who knows what happens to her after the baby's born. There's a lot of aftercare. We're speaking mom talk here, Ricky. So there's just a lot of aftercare, and these women are missing out.
And bonding, and bonding in general. There's just that bond and time you have to have with your infant in the first couple hours and first couple days for them to really survive. It's very important. That's natural in motherhood.
Yeah, I think they call that, Whitney, you gave the right terminology for it, the thriving. And some of these babies, and I don't know if you guys, this is an uncomfortable conversation portion of this, is that failure to thrive. Some of these babies, even in the United States, not in prison, just conventional, they die because they failure to thrive. Maybe they're not getting that nurturing. Some moms don't know how to be mom. They can't bond with the baby. And the nurses will have to go in there and hold the babies and try to give them that bonding and nurturing. If they don't get that, they die. So imagine what happens in the prison environment, when they're not getting that nurturing. So we don't have the statistics here on the infant deaths. Maybe that will be our next topic, because how many of them actually survive in the prison environment? I'm sure there's stats on that. Ricky, you want to take the ball and run with it here?
Absolutely. As with any new social service, there's active dialogue about whether prison nurseries are good for babies. Advocates of these nurseries say that the bond between a mother and an infant in the first months following birth has long been seen as the strongest single predictor of the child's future emotional well-being. Kind of what you all had just stated. Studies indicate that when a mother-child bond is disturbed, these children often develop severe problems related to a disorganized attachment pattern and other deviant behaviors. And even in my, study of psychology, that's how it determines if someone's going to have a secure attachment, avoidant, ambivalent attachment, all of those things. So those are some different factors that people consider in regards to whether mothers should have their children behind bars. Critics, however, of prison nurseries argue that statistics indicate that many offenders reoffend, and that keeping a baby in prison just delays the inevitable trauma of separation. Some say a child who stays with her mother in prison is being unfairly punished or sentenced herself, given the restrictions and deprivations of prison environment. So you have the pros and you have the cons. And we're going to have this question: should children be allowed to bond with the mother or be removed as soon as practical and placed in adoption, foster care, or with the mother's extended family? The answer to that question matters more than ever, because incarceration rates, particularly for women, have risen at a rate more than the past several decades. The United States has the highest incarceration rate, going over 25%. Even though we only represent 5% of the world population. So a quarter of the world's population's prison statistics come from us, even though we only represent 5%. That's an alarming statistic. And we'll explore that a little more right after our first sponsor break. We'll see you soon.
Jennifer Dumas spends a lot of quiet time with her 6-month daughter, Cody Lynn. She's a giggly baby, despite her surroundings, inside the maximum security Bedford Hills Correctional Facility in New York.
I was like, what, a nursery in jail? Are you serious? Like, at first I was thinking about it, I'm like, this is crazy. Like, no way. Like, you have all these people around. But when I actually got here, I was like, it's not as bad as what I was thinking.
The New York prison is one of 8 prison nurseries in the U.S. where convicted mothers can stay with their babies. In most prisons, babies born behind bars must be given up to a relative or foster care.
I got charged with attempted burglary second.
Dumas was 3 weeks pregnant when she was arrested with her boyfriend for trying to steal a safe packed with $32,000 worth of cash and jewelry. Now, between daily work and chores, she spends her time with Cody Lynn. At Bedford, inmates are allowed to spend up to 18 months of their sentence in the nursery unit. Since the 1980s, the number of women in prison has grown more than 700%. According to the nonprofit Sentencing Project, an estimated 1 in 25 women are pregnant when they enter prison. Katie Young is serving time at the Decatur Correctional Center in Illinois for drug-related crimes. She considers the chance to live with her daughter Marissa a blessing, but she's away from her other 2 children.
To be separated from them is awful. I mean, it's the worst experience that I have to go through, and I live with that every day. All I can do is just look forward to the future.
But not all experts support raising babies behind bars, arguing prisons should be reserved for punishment and the focus should be on what's best for the baby. Researcher Mary Byrne, who spent years studying mothers and children at Bedford's nursery, found the practice allows crucial bonding.
At the end of their prison nursery time, they were able to pass on to the majority of the children a sense of security, a secure base, and trust in the primary caregiver who was the mother. So that was really quite astonishing.
But she says there should be better community service alternatives for pregnant women to begin with. Sister Teresa Fitzgerald runs the nonprofit Our Children that operates the Bedford Nursery. She agrees more support is needed, which is why after release, they provide everything from a job to daycare to clothes.
We all deserve a second chance in whatever avenue, and that's really what this is all about.
Come sit.
After serving 2 years at Bedford for drug trafficking, Stephanie Reese now lives and works at Our Children with her son Major. She is about to attend Hunter College to be a social worker.
And he's what really keeps me going, and just want to give him a life that I never had and just break the cycle that has been passed on from generation to generation.
That's what many of these mothers seek, redemption through caring for another life.
Bye-bye.
Bonnie Ghosh, Associated Press, New York.
Welcome back to Uncomfortable Conversation, and this is a hot topic. Our conversation is on the topic of babies being born behind bars. Whew. I mean, babies in prison. This is an eye-opener for us. We'd like to start the conversation with our panelist, Whitney Hartford. Whitney, is this your first time hearing about this topic of babies being born behind bars, and how does it make you feel?
This actually is my first time hearing about the topic, and my heart hurts because, as a mother, I understand the bond that you have when you first give birth to your baby. So for some of these ladies who don't have that nursing opportunity and they have their babies taken away from them, I was kind of getting teared up just watching the video, because you have a bond carrying that baby for 9 months. So, you know, wanting to establish more of a routine or process for these ladies that are going through pregnancy, I definitely feel like that's needed throughout the whole United States, in general, the process of prisons, just because like we can't help if somebody gets pregnant and has a baby, but you can help the outcome of that. You can help how that baby turns out with that mother or with another family.
Thank you, Whitney. And are you speaking from experience with motherhood?
I am speaking from experience. I definitely know as a mother that when you're carrying that baby, I've carried twins, you know, going through the process and giving birth and then thinking like those ladies, maybe my baby is going to be taken away from me, I would be devastated. Or, you know, being able to have my baby with me for at least 30 days to a year, not longer, just to be able to have a bond with them if they do part from me to go with family or something like that. I've already established some kind of bond or mother figure in their life versus them just going off to the next stranger.
Thank you so much. Coming from Momming It Like a Boss, I believe that's one of the things that you do, presences that you have in the social media world. So in 2011, the movie Babies Behind Bars followed the pregnancy and birth in prison, including the Week Ones program at the women's prison in Indiana, which behaved prisoners are allowed to keep their babies in a nursery ring with other inmates and nannies. Whitney, as a mother of 3 children from your perspective, do you feel that there is a negative impact on children starting their lives in prison? So you mentioned you had twins. You also have another child. Can you explain us as a mother of 3, the impact that something like this would have? You're on mute, Whitney.
Oh, sorry. I'm unmuted now.
Okay.
From my perspective, I feel like there are pros and cons, but I feel like there's more of a positive impact, because if these babies are born and then just taken away, it's going to take time for that baby to be processed to a new family. You know, there's nothing like that initial bond. Me personally, like I said, being able to hold my baby, and we need second chances. You know, everybody makes mistakes. Some of these convictions, people change. There's nothing, I will speak from experience as a mother who had my 9-year-old originally. She changed my life. You know, I moved mountains for her. So that for those ladies in there, being able to have the slight taste of motherhood, that chance to turn life around when you have that baby and you realize you have to care for another child, I think it's more of a positive impact. Just from watching the video, you know, some of these ladies want to break the cycle, and being able to have that time, whether it's a couple hours, to raise and see what it feels like before they pass on the torch, may give them more motivation to be a better individual when they get out for their kid. So I think that, you know, nobody wants to have their kid in a prison environment to be raised, but you don't want your kid taken away and raised with another family. I don't think, some mothers aren't the greatest, but most mothers, they want to do what's best for their kids. And, you know, giving these women a second chance to prove to that their kids that they can be a good mother and do what's best for them, I think is a positive impact more than negative.
Okay, Whitney. So the main point that we got from you was because these babies are starting their lives out in prison. So are you saying that there's more of a positive impact or a negative impact just starting their life out in prison?
Well, I think it's positive for them to start out. I mean, where else would they be? They're going to be taken to a foster home. You know, it's all circumstantial. But I think the positive thing is they've been in their mother's stomach for 9 months. They've already had that bond. So to be able to start out with somebody caring for them that already may have initially had that bond versus somebody that doesn't know them or anything like that, I mean, I think that's already a positive start to begin with. And being able to give them that 30 days just of a start off, just as a jump start, for the next person, I think would help the baby's health and the mother, as well as give them more motivation to be a better mother, whenever they get out from their sentence. But I think it's positive. I think the negative is taking them away, because babies lose their survival. They lose their survival instinct when they're stripped away from their mothers and placed in a completely different environment.
Wow. Thank you so much for clarifying that, Whitney. And wow, those are some great points. Initially, you may think that, that's not good, but we understand. And I'm going to maybe agree with that. It's better to have some bonding than no bonding at all. Take that baby away the minute the baby's born and that separation occurs. You've lost that one opportunity. I think, as us mothers mentioned in the first portion of this show, you don't get a do-over with that. So that's your one opportunity. Let's bring a male perspective in here. Ricky,
Well,
do you have some other points to share with us on this very sensitive issue?
absolutely. And those were some great points, Whitney. We do have to really think about reimagining the perspective on childhood in prison, because looking at the statistics, it's not going away anytime soon. Between 1991 and 2000, the number of parents incarcerated in state and federal prisons increased by 79%. In addition, 5% of all women in jail are pregnant. That means that in the State Department of Corrections, many may have more than 100 women that are giving birth incarcerated in any given year. More than 100 women are giving birth. Most of these children are immediately separated from their mothers. The separation of the child and the mother may cause increased levels of anxiety and depression for the mother and seriously disrupt the mother-child relationship. Healthy births combined with the parenting ability of the mother are crucial to the well-being of the child, as well as the successful reintegration of the mother back into society. Again, this problem is not going away anytime soon. So, Dr. Katrina Esau, what are your thoughts about the reason why more women are being incarcerated, and is it ethical or unethical to take babies from their mothers?
So for me, in terms of why more women are being incarcerated, I mean, we kind of touched on this, last week. I think a lot of it has to do with, situation and circumstances. While I can understand it doesn't necessarily justify what that person has done. And, it sucks, to be a parent, to be a mother, and then to be in prison. In terms of how they're being treated, I'm on the fence, because I so agree with Whitney in terms of having that initial ability to bond with the child. I think it's important, because not only do you build a bond, but at least you have something to remember. You have something that you can point back to. And a lot of times we think, children don't remember, but they do. And so I think it's important to have some type of bonding. It's important not only for the child, but I think for the parent as well. The flip side of that, though, where I'm kind of on the fence, is I think about, what we are creating, the paradigm that we're creating for the child. And so how are we shaping them, to be born in a prison, to be in a prison? It's one thing to have bonding at home. But if you're in prison, how much time are they really allowing you to bond with the baby? What does that look like? But then, you have the emotional piece of it. I think about postpartum. Like, if you're separating a child from its mother, are those numbers increasing? Like, the emotional strain, take out prison for a second. The emotional strain on a mother, your emotions are all over the place. And so if you add the aspect of, okay, I'm in prison and now I can't see my child when I want to, there's a whole nother dynamic that we're talking about here. So it's dicey, very dicey, because I'm a proponent for having the bonding, but I also, when I think about the best interest of the child and how we're shaping them, we don't want to create repetitive behaviors. And so that's the other thing that kind of weighs heavy on my heart, is because, is it the best environment for the child? Are they receiving the best care, like who the caregivers, do they even know how to care for these children? And so if you're talking about, an hour out of 24 that the mother has to be with the child, is it worth the risk of the downstream impact on the child and how we're shaping that paradigm?
Absolutely, Dr. Esau. You brought up an amazing and powerful point as well that involves nature versus nurture, the shaping portion, because yes, the mother is getting the opportunity to bond, but it's in a limited capacity. We also don't understand the circumstances she has to deal with on a daily basis because she gets to have that moment of love with her child, but she's also experiencing the very complexities of navigating the prison system. And a lot of women in there, they're not mothers, or they may be so far gone in their mentality that they want to spoil the experience for her. So she has to survive in the prison system and still try to find a place in her heart to give the child the love that they need. And sometimes maybe the best place for the child to be is out with her family if she has some family who can give the kid more love, affection, and compassion on a more 24-hour basis. So that is definitely a great point. Sabrina, did you have anything else you wanted to add to that?
Yes, Ricky, that's very complex. I mean, I see both sides of that pendulum swinging, and the other side to a baby being with the mom, especially when you're nursing, and us moms know it helps the mother to heal faster. So if you're nursing a baby, it actually helps her. That bond, that whole thing was created for a reason. So we're disturbing, like you said, the whole nature, nurture, our environment. And that pendulum just swings. And we're just talking about it's uncomfortable conversation because nobody's talking about it. It's like we all know, now we know, but the people that really know the whole prison system, they know, but it's not really being talked about. It's like, we know what's happening, but we're not going to discuss it. So we're bringing this matter to light. Let's get some other points, though. We want to find out exactly what's going on number-wise. The United States has the highest incarceration rate of women in the world, with over 205,000 women currently behind bars in either the state or federal prisons or jails. Oof, there's just a lot of women locked up, and another million on probation or parole. Imagine if those women were incarcerated. That's another million. With an 8-fold increase in female incarceration population since the 1970s, more women are incarcerated now than ever before in the U.S. history, and the rate is growing at an unprecedented growth. Numerous studies indicate that the increase, because we're wondering why are these numbers going up, that the increase in numbers of incarcerated women is largely due to the war on drugs. The government has changed its policy, revamped it, and the sentencing has gotten tougher, including mandatory incarceration for minimal crimes. They call it minimum. They call it low impact. Low sentencing. Their offenses. Something that was maybe 10 days jail time is now a year in prison time, and so the prioritization of drug arrests by law enforcement has just soared. Because women are more likely than men to be in prison for these, what they consider non-violent and low-level drug offenses, these women, especially economically poor women, economically challenged women, they're bearing the consequences of, our environment, the law, the low-level crime, and they're being arrested and incarcerated. So this war on drugs is having a greater impact on the women. They're a little bit more susceptible to these type of low-level crimes. I think the one we saw, the lady was robbery. There was no life-threatening situation going on. There were no, from what we know with her particular crime, there was maybe no weapons, but there was burglary involved. And here she is now. And she was one of the fortunate ones to be in a state that had the nursery. Ricky, you have any more comments? I know this is a very hot topic.
Well, I'll just say I think part of the reason that happens, I'm obviously not in all cases, but I've known women who have been involved in those scenarios. Sometimes they're covering for the spouse or the significant other who is involved in some other facets of drug trafficking and other things, and they take the blame because they feel they'll get a lighter sentence. So sometimes they are doing it because of love, and they're doing it to cover for someone else. And in a sense, what they're doing is they are not prioritizing their own self-care, their own family, for someone else who really put them in a situation that they shouldn't be in. Obviously, there's the personal accountability, but it's also just kind of seeing it as there's a multitude of reasons why the women are being involved in this. Sometimes for survival, sometimes for love. But overall, I say that we have to start really thinking about the choices that we make and how it's going to impact our families and our legacy, especially our children if we have them. So I think part of the discussion has to be, yes, we need the mothers to have more opportunities to be able to be involved in their child's life, but we also have to get them into the mindset that, you know, when we're making certain decisions, even though we might love someone, we might feel that they treat us great and they're providing a certain lifestyle that we're used to. When things catch up to us, how is that really going to impact the people that we really care about, which is our children? How is that going to affect that? How are we going to be able to interact with them? So that's what I have for that. And we are going to have some more discussion about the pros and cons when we come back from this sponsor break and continue the discussion on babies behind bars, ethical or unethical.
Welcome back to Uncomfortable Conversations, and we're sizzling with this topic. So much feeling and emotion, so much knowledge, things that we're learning. And, you know, like we said, we can kind of see both sides to this topic. So what we're going to go with right now on to further this topic is that with these babies behind bars is that a growing number of pregnant women, as we say, are going to jail, and with the impact on the children and the children's lives being separated. What is the impact? We've talked about that. But now we're going to share some pros and cons and why we need to have these uncomfortable conversations with these issues. So yes, we've kind of identified some pros and cons, and let's kind of hear these out. The pros. It can promote survivingly very good behavior with the mom. We saw that one mother in prison, how she seemed to flourish. You know, maybe her whole perspective on crime has changed because she's taking care of a life, which in turn, you could see her, this particular, not this mom, but any mom, shortening of their sentence, made with much likely even a sentence being overturned. The mother-child bond could stay intact, and the first year of the baby's life is so important for this process. And we talked about that first year. The mother will work harder and have something to dedicate her time to. That becomes her focus. Again, the video we saw earlier, she was really into the motherhood. The baby will not remember when it gets older. So it won't leave with any type of mental problems. The baby will be shown more love than ever, as their moms will leave with some type of appreciation, that bond of relationship. I think Whitney talked about that initial bond, having some kind of bond established. So those are the pros. Basically, what we're saying here is that the mother has more incentive to do better, maybe even have better options in her life. The baby still gets that whole bonding moment with the mom, no mental issues, and maybe that's a good scenario. Let's talk about the con side, though. The baby will be around convicts, and it could be very dangerous for them. If the mother's sentence is too long, they may be taken away from her before she is released. Ooh. And it's not fair to the other mothers who have to say goodbye straight after birth. The child may resent the mother when they grow up and find out that they have spent the first year of their life, maybe even a year and a half of their lives, half of their lives even, in jail. They do not have the facilities to properly treat the baby if it gets ill, and it will not be a priority for the guards and the rest of the workers because that's not their job. That sounds harsh and cold, but remember, they're dealing with these convicts and women behind bars all day long, and nobody said they had to have a heart in there. The father would be the one paying for the crime, only getting to see their child and partner during visiting hours. More and more pregnant women are serving a sentence which asks the question, are they trying to get pregnant just to serve a purpose inside, hoping that they will qualify for the program? And let's face it, people do a lot of things. Maybe they get pregnant intentionally, so they'll get that extra grace, time with the baby. You think about that. If they even get a year with that baby in the nursery, like that one mom, she got a year and some months, I think 18 months with the baby. That's time that they're not in the traditional prison routine. So are they manipulating the system? So these are the pros and cons. And I think one thing that we didn't talk about is the father's role in this. And maybe that's another discussion, but where is he at? And why is he not taking care of the baby? It takes two. So we've got these babies in prison, but we just kind of gave some pros and cons here. Let's go to Dr. Katrina and get her thoughts on that. What do you think, Dr. Katrina, on these pros and cons?
I think, we've kind of been talking about it. When I hear you say, about women intentionally getting pregnant just to have, to see if they can, number one, get in the program, and then number two, to have privileges that they might not necessarily have otherwise. That's crazy to me, but I know it has to be real. There's, I'm sure that there's people that do it, but I think we have to look even greater, like the pros and cons have to go even a little deeper. We kind of touched on it earlier, but part of what's missing is the rehabilitation. Like, we have to, rehabilitate the parents, because, even for me, a con, yes, you mentioned about, the guards, they don't necessarily have to have a heart. They don't have to be compassionate. So we don't know what type of treatment these kids are getting. But the other thing that comes to mind is, what if it's a child, we think pedophile and, it's automatically assumed male, but there are women that are just as twisted. And so that goes back to what I touched on earlier, is like, who are the caregivers? So to me, that's a con. You don't have training, you don't have proper facilities. There's not a program, there's not a standard program that the government is regulating, or anybody for that matter. And so to me, I think the cons kind of, outweigh the pros. But as I said earlier, it's one of those things, yes, I want the child to have that bonding with the parent. But if you think about, the other thing that I think about is, like, what's the sentence? Like, how long are we talking? If you're a mother that, has a life sentence, like, what is that 30 days up to 6 years going to make that big of a difference, when I will never as a child get to have you in my life, type of thing? So it's amazing. It's jaw dropping to hear the numbers, to hear the pros and cons. I think we have to go so much deeper, as Ricky brought up earlier. The nurture versus nature. There's so many different things that we have to think about. It's more than just the simplicities of having a program, having a mother be there with her or with the child. So it's just we got to dig deeper. It's mind-blowing to me, it really is.
Thank you so much, Dr. Katrina. Whitney, you want to weigh in on that, the pros and cons?
Yes. So I think there's a huge imbalance, obviously, with the system. You don't want your kids raised in a prison. You don't want them around horrible people. But the thing is, whether they're in the prison or whether they're out in the real world, we don't know where these kids are going once they are taken away from the mother, and at least for 30 days or 60 days or however long they can create that bond, they have a little bit of a time period. I think there needs to be some kind of program or some kind of balance to where it ensures the safety of the baby, but also allows some kind of slow separation from the mother and the baby, so it's healthy for both people, depending on what the sentence is and where they're at with why they got in prison in the first place. But I completely understand. I would never want a baby to be in danger in a prison. I just think of the outside world, and I have so much to protect my children from. I can only imagine, like, okay, this baby is going to foster program. And yeah, there's a lot of programs out there that are good for kids, but also there's a lot of kids that go to homes that aren't the best for them. So this whole thing is dicey. And I think that there's more research. There definitely needs to be programs put into place to where, if the mother is allowed to see the child, it's for a shorter time period and they get to go with the father, like Sabrina said, where's the father in all this? Because it takes two. And, they should really be probably more so with the father and visiting the mother on hours when they can to ensure that they're in a good, proper living environment. And that's my opinion on it.
The pros and cons are phenomenal. We appreciate your comments. We're going to continue a little bit of thought process on this when we come back from break.
Uncomfortable Conversations Talk Radio is sponsored by the Trendsetter Mentor Group, an exclusive membership for mentorship. You can follow all our hosts on Facebook. Search Trendsetter Mentor Group and join. Now back to the show.
Welcome back, everyone. We're on this hot topic of, babies behind bars and women incarcerated. And we're going to go to one of our favorite parts of the show, the Love It or Leave It. We're going to have Ricky Burney kind of bring in one of our guests, and he's going to fire off a few things to see how they answer. Ricky?
Good morning. We are doing the Uncomfortable Conversation Challenge. And what this is going to be is basically Whitney Hartford. You're going to be our esteemed guest who is going to do this. What you'll have is 5 minutes to answer 10 questions. Now, but the questions are very surface level, but the idea is to get the perspective of someone. Don't assume a person's perspective, acknowledge it. So answering some of these questions will get the viewers who may not necessarily have experience interacting with someone like you the ability to be able to hear it directly instead of just assuming what you would think. So are you ready? There's no right or wrong answer. It's completely your perspective.
I'm ready.
All right. Just take a deep breath. You're going to do amazing. Okay. Just let me know when you're ready.
I'm ready.
Okay. All right, Sabrina, can you be our timekeeper?
I got it ready.
All
5
right.
minutes.
All right, we're gonna do this Janet Jackson style in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Whitney, do you think the term Karen is a fair stereotype for Black people to use when describing white women?
I do not think it's fair, because if you used it on a Black person or somebody of that race, they would be very offended. So I think, don't use something on someone that you wouldn't want them to use on you.
Absolutely. Is it fair to say that white women are more comfortable dating college and professional sports players, or is that just another stereotype?
I think that's a stereotype. I think everybody's going for the sports players. I don't think it's just white women nowadays.
All right. The Me Too movement changed the way men treat women in the workplace. Do you think that the way women dress should change as well?
I definitely think that the way women dress should be very professional, and there shouldn't be that boundary line push. If men can't push it, then women shouldn't push it either. If we want to live up to a certain standard as women, then we need to lead by example and also be dressing like that, and also, same thing for men. So I think it's equal.
Growing up, most children attended church on Sunday. Do you think the shift in attendance is creating a disconnect of moral value?
I absolutely think that there's a disconnect with moral value now that kids in going to church that it doesn't happen as often. Me growing up, consistently reading the Bible, it helped me to have a conscience and make right and wrong decisions. So not growing up with those morals and values might make it a little bit harder for the youngins nowadays to make their better decisions.
Okay. And what do you think is the cure to white flight when Black people move into white communities?
Well, you want to make people feel more comfortable when you move in. So maybe go take them over addition, welcome them in, instead of, being loud and rowdy, or I don't know when you move in and how they're acting, but I would go always do a kind gesture. People don't leave if you always move in and go introduce yourself properly with a kind gesture.
Do you think women should be allowed to play professional sports on the same team with men?
No, I don't. The reason for that is we aren't as strong. We don't have the muscles that they do. We would be pulverized. I just don't think it's a smart idea.
Okay. Do you think women are partially responsible for the rise in infidelity and high divorce rates?
I do, because ultimately we are a product of who we are and our image. So depending on how we're walking around, dressed, talking, and what we're putting on for others to see is what ultimately causes people to trip and fall into infidelity and doing things. I think if we moderate more what we're wearing and how we are as women, and demand the respect of how our image is, then maybe those numbers wouldn't be as high.
Okay. And what is the worst pickup line someone has ever used on you?
Oh, I have two. One, a guy was like, "Hey girl, can I get your number?" And I was like, "No." And then somebody came and grabbed a tag off the back of my shirt and looked at it, and then they were like, "Oh yeah, exactly what I thought. Made in heaven." And I was just like, that's too cheesy.
Men often say good guys finish last when it comes to women. Do you feel that there is some truth to that?
Yes and no, because as a woman, you have to grow and appreciate a good man. And from the beginning, you don't always appreciate that. The guys slip through your fingers all the time. And a lot of women are about the thrill of the chase instead of being grounded and realizing when you have a good man in front of you that's willing to give you the world, don't mistake it for a clown that's, maybe just telling you what you want to hear. So I think that definitely plays a role in maturity in a woman, as to good guys possibly finishing last. But I think later in life they win.
And how do guys get out the friend zone with women if they want a serious relationship?
Don't put yourself in the friend zone. Like, don't be in the friend zone. If a girl puts you in the friend zone, you take yourself out of there and go somewhere else. You don't have to wait around for somebody to be interested in you. Always next.
Perfect. You made it through. So great responses. I loved the perspective. Again, when you ask these questions amongst different women, you will get different responses. But that's what we want to really shed light on, that as people, we are not monolith. Even if we are the same gender, the same race, we all have different perspectives on the same concept. So that is what this is all about. So thank you for taking the challenge. Thank you for stepping up to the challenge and being able to overcome it. And with that being said, we are going to close out the show. And just wanted to give you the opportunity, Whitney, to allow the listeners to stay connected with you. How can they stay connected with you? What is your social media, your YouTube, and other ways they can connect with you?
Oh, thank you so much. You guys can stay connected with me on Facebook and Instagram. I have my page, Momming It Like a Boss. I provide my services on that, or just my regular Facebook page, Whitney Hartford. You can also find me on my YouTube channel, and it's Whitney Hartford as well. And you guys could just see all the developments. And if you need assistance with IVF information, identity theft, Momming It Like a Boss, postpartum body bounce back, you can find all those services and contact me through social.
Thank you so much. And with that being said, we have to have you again on the show. Thank you, Dr. Esau, for always coming with your insight. Can you give the people your social media handles so they can stay connected with you as well?
Absolutely. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn, all under Dr. Katrina Esau. My business page is Dr. Katrina E3, or you can put in KE3 worldwide. You can also find out more information about me on my website, www.drkatrinaesau.com. There's information about me, my books, my journal, and the academy that I launched on November 23rd. You can find me there. Thank you.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much. And thank you, Sabrina, for always being on. We will be back next week to further this discussion because, again, this is a multi-layered issue here, and we are ready to have the conversation and start to hopefully bring solutions. See you next Wednesday, and have a great week.
You can follow our hosts on Facebook. Search Trendsetter Mentor Group. Join. Email your uncomfortable conversation questions to npartners@yahoo.com. We will address your questions on next week's show. Let's have that conversation.